the secret keepers of the evening garden. Deep in the heart of the Florida woods, where the giant live oaks draped their branches in long, silvery curtains of Spanish moss, the world was changing its clothes. The brilliant golden sun was slowly sinking below the horizon, painting the sky in long streaks of warm pink, deep orange, and a soft, velvety purple. High up in the branches, the bright red cardinals and the noisy mockingbirds were singing their very last songs of the day, tucking their heads beneath their feathers to drift off to sleep. The busy honeybees had already buzzed back to their hives, and the afternoon lizards had crawled beneath the cool leaves to rest. The daytime world was quiet, safe, and ready for bed. But just as the children in the nearby farmhouse were stepping onto their porch to look at the first twinkling stars, a completely different neighborhood was stretching its limbs. High up on a freestanding wooden pole at the edge of the forest, inside a large, dark gray wooden house with 4 cozy chambers, a tiny creature named Pip opened his eyes. Pip was not a bird, though he could swoop and dive through the air faster than any robin. And Pip was definitely not a mouse, even though he had a tiny button nose, big round eyes, and a coat of soft, warm brown fur. Pip was a mammal, just like a puppy or a kitten, but he belonged to a very ancient, magical family called Chiroptera. To the humans below, that name sounded like a secret spell, but in the old language of nature, it meant something wonderful. Handwing. Pip stretched his arms out wide, yawning a tiny bat yawn. If the children on the porch could have looked closely at Pip in the shadows, they would have seen that his wings were a true marvel of nature. He did not have stiff, feathered wings. Instead, Pip had the exact same arm bones and the exact same 5 fingers that the children had on their own hands. The only difference was that Pip's finger bones were incredibly long, thin, and delicate, like flexible wooden chopsticks. Stretched tightly between these long fingers was a thin, leathery blanket of skin that connected all the way down to his ankles. When Pip flew, he didn't just flap. He literally waved his hands, swimming through the cool night air by spreading his long fingers wide. Pip lived in the bat house with a grand colony of nearly 100 of his closest friends and family, mostly Brazilian free-tailed bats who were famous for their long, slender tails that extended far past their wing membranes, looking just like the tail of a little mouse. They loved the big, multi-chambered house because it kept them perfectly safe from the bright porch lights and the loud noises of human activity, which always disrupted their daytime sleep. Their home had been painted dark gray by the wise gardener below, because they lived in North Florida, where the winter winds could be chilly. The dark paint soaked up the daytime sun like a sponge, keeping the inside of the nursery rooms at a humid, cozy 100 degrees Fahrenheit. In the chamber right next to Pip, a group of southeastern bat mothers were gently grooming their tiny pink pups. These little babies had been born in the early spring, and because they had no fur yet to keep them warm, they snuggled tightly together, sharing the thick body heat of the colony. Pip's cousins, the hoary bats and the Seminole bats, didn't live in the wooden house at all. They were the solitary tree roosters of the forest, preferring to spend their days living like quiet hermits, camouflaged perfectly beneath the loose, peeling bark of old pine trees, or hanging upside down inside the clumps of Spanish moss. Because they slept out in the open air, where the weather could change, they had grown much thicker, more colorful fur than Pip, and their mothers gave birth to larger litters of 2 to 4 pups at a time, keeping them hidden safely under the green canopy. Pip shook his fur, unhooked his small, delicate toes from the wooden ceiling ridge where he had been hanging upside down all day, and let himself drop into the open evening air. He spread his magnificent hand wings, caught the breeze, and soared up into the starlit sky. His wings were completely silent as he darted over the garden lawn. The very first thing Pip felt after his long daytime nap was an immense, burning thirst. He dived down low over the gardener's small backyard pond, skimming his belly just inches above the flat, glassy water. Without ever slowing down or stopping his flight, Pip dipped his tiny mouth into the water, taking a quick, refreshing drink right on the wing. With his thirst quenched, Pip's tummy gave a loud rumble. Flying took an incredible amount of muscle power and energy, which gave Pip a lightning-fast metabolism and a giant appetite. He needed a massive amount of food to fuel his nightly shift, and tonight, the garden was absolutely crawling with trouble. Down below, hidden among the tomato plants and the rows of sweet corn, a tiny army of insects was preparing to chew up the gardener's hard work. Black cutworms, tobacco budworms, cabbage loopers, and fall armyworms were creeping across the leaves, ready to munch on the vegetables. Worst of all, a thick cloud of hungry mosquitoes was buzzing near the porch, waiting to bite the children. But Pip was the ultimate natural protector of the landscape, and he possessed a secret superpower called echolocation. As he zoomed through the pitch-black night, Pip began to call out, uttering high-pitched, ultrasonic cries through his mouth. These squeaks were so incredibly high that human ears could not hear a single note. The invisible sound waves traveled through the dark garden air, hitting a twisting moth, a beetle, and a tiny mosquito. Just like a rubber ball bouncing off a wall, the sound waves hit the bugs and echoed backward through the night. Pip's large ears acted like sensitive satellite dishes, catching the returning echoes. In a split second, his clever brain turned those echoes into a perfect three-dimensional map made entirely of sound. Pip could see the exact shape of a tiny mosquito in the dark just by listening. He knew precisely how far away it was, which way it was twisting, and even how fast its microscopic wings were flapping. Dolphins use this exact same sonar trick to navigate the deep, dark ocean waters. But tonight, it belonged to the king of the garden sky. Pip pinpointed a plump corn earworm moth and dived like a tiny rocket. He didn't just catch the bug with his mouth. He swept his left wing forward like a baseball glove, trapping the moth in his leathery wing membrane, flicked it up into his mouth, and gobbled it down mid-flight. Turn after turn, swoop after swoop, Pip and his friends feasted on the pests. In just one single night, a tiny bat like Pip could eat thousands of insects. Up on the porch, the children noticed that the mosquitoes had suddenly vanished, and the pests in the garden grew so terrified of the ultrasonic clicks that they fled the yard entirely just to stay alive. While Pip and his colony flew their patterns through the sky, they left behind a magical gift for the earth below. As they defecated, their droppings, called guano, fell softly into the soil and beneath their tall pole. This might have seemed silly to the children, but to the plants, guano was a treasure. For centuries, farmers all over the world had prized bat guano as the most powerful organic fertilizer on Earth. It contained a perfect balance of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that enriched the soil, improved its texture, and helped the dirt hold onto water so the plant roots could breathe. It even acted as a natural fungicide, working like a shield to protect the delicate vegetables from dangerous mold and sickness. The gardener below would carefully collect it with a shovel while wearing protective gloves, adding it to the compost pile to turn ordinary dirt into a super-powered engine for giant, beautiful blossoms. Hour after hour, the secret night shift continued, with Pip guarding the crops and keeping the air clear. But as the dark night began to soften, a pale gray light started to creep over the eastern trees. The morning stars began to fade, and the first early morning rooster let out a loud crow. During the daytime, birds were waking up, stretching their feathers and preparing to take over the garden watch. Pip felt his wings grow heavy. His tummy was full, the garden pests were gone, and the crops were safe for another day. He fluttered back toward the tall pole, gliding gracefully up into the bottom opening of the cozy four-chambered house. He found his favorite spot on the rough wooden ridge, reached up with his strong little hind limbs, and gripped the wood tightly with his toes. Pip let his body relax, hanging completely upside down without expending a single bit of energy. He folded his long, delicate finger bones inward, wrapping his leathery wing membranes around his furry body like a warm, cozy sleeping bag. The wise gardener had placed a smooth metal cone flashing around the middle of the pole below, so Pip knew that hungry snakes could never climb up to disturb his sleep. As the children walked out into the bright morning sun to check on their growing tomatoes, they looked up at the quiet gray bat house on the pole. Everything seemed completely still, but they knew the truth. Deep inside, Pip and his family were resting soundly, sleeping through the hot Florida day, waiting for the shadows to lengthen so they could spread their magnificent hand wings once more and protect the beautiful garden they called home